Which programs have seen the biggest jump in the odds market since the beginning of the season? I hit up FanDuel. I said, I want to do something interesting on Thursday. I want to talk about where you guys had these teams in the preseason, and then based on 4 weeks worth of data, which ones have you moved numbers on the most? And they said, paper pop it. Let's go. Miami is the biggest mover. This is not a shock. None of these will be a shock to you necessarily, but I just want you to think about what the talk was with Miami. So we bet them to win the ACC, and I bookmarked a lot of comments of folks hating on us, and I go back and look, and they've been deleted. Also not a shock. They were plus 380 to win the ACC. So they had the third best odds to win the ACC in the preseason. FanDuel now has them with the number one best odds, plus 125 overall to win the ACC. To make the playoff, though, that's the real big move. They were plus 210 to make the playoff, and now they are minus 230. I don't know if you want to phrase it like this, but they are extremely favored, the Miami Hurricanes, to make the playoff. Are we ready for that world? The answer for some of you is a hard no. And you know what? Miami's not the only one. A lot of you aren't ready for Tennessee to be elite either. You think you are. A lot of you are going to pull for Tennessee this weekend. And you don't get what Tennessee's like when they're elite because you weren't born the last time Tennessee was elite. Get ready to learn Rocky Top, buddy. Get ready to learn Rocky Top. So anyway, back to Miami. To win the whole thing, they were plus 5,000 to begin the season. They are plus 1,800 now. Because here's a funny thing that happens. When sharp money or square money alike sees elite quarterback play, really, really high-level line of scrimmage play, and a couple of really good recruiting classes stacked on top of each other, complemented with someone having nailed it in the portal like Mario and Miami did, they understand it doesn't really matter how long I've dunked on Miami because this is not that Miami. This is windshield Miami. That was rear view window Miami. I don't think they're going back to rear view window Miami for quite a while. For some reason, this was so hard for people to grasp. Jesse, we probably did half a dozen of these segments in the preseason, and we were called carrying water for them. We were running PR for them. No, we just had common sense. We knew what we were looking at. Next up, USC. Yes, the USC Trojans are here. Big game 2 days from now at Michigan. That win over LSU triggered a ton of public movement on USC, as it should. So to win the Big Ten, they had the fifth best odds to win the Big Ten. Now they have the fourth best odds, but the number has moved drastically. It's gone from plus 5,000 to plus 3,000. To make the playoff, though, that's the big move. Plus 470 to plus 140. And so, again, it's going to be a little different because the overwhelming favorite to win the Big Ten is going to be Ohio State. And it will be until proven otherwise. And so you may not have good odds movement on that front, but to make the playoff, you don't have to beat Ohio State. To make the playoff, you don't have to win your conference. And so, to lock down an 8 or a 9 or a 10 seed, yeah, USC's got a really good shot at that right now. To win the whole thing, plus 10,000 odds down to plus 2,800. So, folks, again, if you see high-level quarterback play, if you look at Miller Moss, game 1, and you look at USC's defense, and those may be your two biggest question marks, and they get answered in the affirmative emphatically against LSU in week 1, yeah, it stands to reason. You're going to have a lot of movement. Now, I happen to think, in retrospect, having looked at the LSU game now through the prism of what LSU has been since then, this weekend's probably the one that you'll learn more about USC from. I didn't think I'd be saying that, but I think that's reality. It's one thing to beat LSU neutral site week 1 in Vegas. It's another thing to be in the Big Ten and go on the road in the building of the team that won the national title last year and plant your flag there. That would be, I think, if the dust settles and they do that Saturday, that would be the real needle mover for a lot of folks. That would be the one also, if you're a USC fan, I think you remember more fondly for a lot longer. Next up, team I'll see in person for the first time this year, Saturday night. Next biggest mover, actually, is Tennessee, right behind Miami. They're the next biggest mover in the FanDuel odds market. They don't have a major win, though. I don't call the NC State game a major win, all due respect. So you can say Miami doesn't either, because I don't think many of you think very highly of Florida right now. So on one hand, it's interesting. Should the number have moved like this? But then on the other hand, that question's irrelevant. It is an odds market. It is based on real dollars and cents having been moved. So, of course, there is no woulda, shoulda, coulda. If the money is suggesting it has to happen, it's going to happen. So, to win the SEC, it's a really significant move. Tennessee was plus 1,600. They are plus 900 now. That is a really, really big jump because remember, it is a crowded field. Plus 900, you look at that and you say, well, that's still pretty long odds, right? It is not long odds because there's no overwhelming favorite to win this thing because you've got Texas and Georgia and Alabama and Missouri and Ole Miss, and you're part of that mix. It's kind of like the Big 12, just with much better teams, top to bottom, the better quality of team. To make the playoff, it looks just like Miami, actually. It went from plus 198 in the preseason, already not bad odds, to minus 205. So Tennessee also over a 2-1 favorite to make the playoff right now. Just like Miami, over a 2-1 favorite to make the playoff. That doesn't mean you win anything, just make the playoff. And Tennessee also to win the whole thing from plus 3,500 down to plus 1,400. And they also have a big test Saturday night, and I also think that one's the needle mover. Now, it's not hard for me to sell you on the fact that that would move the needle a lot more than NC State. I think it's a tougher sell that beating Michigan's a bigger deal than beating LSU was for USC, but I believe what I believe here. Also, I think some of the feedback we've gotten is from an offensive standpoint. If you look at Tennessee, it's a lot like you took the best parts of the 2022 team, number one passing offense in the country, and then last year they had to run the ball because it was Joe Milton season, and you kind of blended those two. Not that they didn't run the ball in 2022. Heupel would hack the show and take us off the air if we suggested that, but it's a really, really good offense, really good. Sky's the limit for them. Except that they could get upset Saturday night. But otherwise, sky's the limit for them. They have the fifth best odds to win the SEC right now. You see what I was talking about there. Nebraska, let's just a ceremonial paper pop there for the Huskers. It was one of our favorite win totals in the preseason. The over-under win total was 7.5. I know that it's week 4. They're going to win more than 7.5 games. The Big Ten odds are still long. So it was plus 5,000. Now it's plus 3,000. That's because Nebraska's not going to win the Big Ten. Like, no one looks at Nebraska, even with them maximizing their potential this year, and thinks that team will beat Ohio State in Indy or Oregon in Indy or USC or whoever's there. That's not the thinking there. The thinking is, well, what if they make the playoff? That's where you're starting to see a little movement. They were plus 1,000 to make the playoff. Now they're plus 700. And their schedule, honestly, I still think that number is a little long because their schedule sets up very favorably. I think a lot of that being plus 700 has to do with the coming on of USC. They've got a ranked team tomorrow night. They are the Friday night game, number 22 versus number 24, and Illinois comes to town. We already broke that game down, but they go to Ohio State the week of Halloween, and then they go to USC a couple of weeks after that. And they go to Iowa. I don't want to overlook that. They go to Iowa to end the season. So it gets rough. There are some very stiff opponents back there, but you got to ask, what does a 10-2 Nebraska look like in the playoff committee's eyes? And before you answer that, you can't assume anything because you don't know what the rest of the world looks like. If you got a bunch of 11-1s, okay, that's one thing. But what if it's just a total mess at the end of the year? Like, I still think there's a little value on betting that. Yes, we're sitting here saying that about a team that hasn't sniffed it in forever. Yes, we're saying that about a true freshman starting at quarterback. Is it irresponsible? Of course it is. Is this a responsible show? Most of the time, no. No, it is not. So that's some good intel, I think. Now, when we do this again in 3 weeks, then we'll have a lot more chaos and carnage on our hands, and then that'll be really fun.